All right, let's move on to the team that could potentially pose a real
Yep.
challenge to the Liberty come playoff time. The Minnesota Lynx, who are the number 2 seed in the WNBA with the second best net rating, also. Minnesota as a state, they're kind of having a hell of a year, I have to say. With the Timberwolves, they have a vice presidential nominee. People are talking about the state very positively right now. And now they also have an awesome WNBA basketball team. What is it with Minneapolis and these dominant, especially defensively, basketball teams?
I couple of great coaches, I guess. I mean, I think Cheryl Reeve should be coach of the year pretty solidly.
Mm.
Uh, Minnesota's just awesome to watch. The level of execution. I'm sure is that like something you have noticed from just watching their games this year, just how
It really is like watching the Minnesota Timberwolves where just like every defensive possession, everyone's flying around. They contest Will and I talked about this in
Mhm.
our playoff series preview between the Nuggets and the Wolves, how the Wolves feel the need to contest every inch, every second of an offensive possession when they're
Yeah.
on defense, where they're gonna pick you up full court. They're not gonna make catches easy. They're not gonna make shots easy. They're not gonna make it easy to move off the ball. Like every single thing you have to fight for. And watching the Minnesota Lynx, it's exactly like watching the Timberwolves in that sense, in that if you are not there to play that particular night, like they are
Oh,
going to eat you alive.
and the Liberty were not ready to come out in the first quarter yesterday, and that was the game. And when you go down 13, 15 points, like I just remember the second quarter, the Liberty were playing well. They were defending again. There was offensive flow. I'm like, finally, they showed up to the party. They cut 4 points off the lead, or and then it ended up going from 17 to 13 at halftime. And it's like, yeah, man, sometimes you're going to play a great quarter of basketball and beat the Lynx by 2 to 4 points in that quarter because that's how good the Lynx are. And I think after 38 games of this season, the players that are having career years, this is who they are on this team. Courtney Williams, Elena Smith, Bridget Carlton. Like, yeah, you may not have thought they were big time contributors on a championship contender prior to this season, but we're long past the time to throw away those preconceived notions. And then on offense, it's the same thing. I mean, every slip, every slight defensive miscommunication, they are exploiting it. They are maybe the best collective passing team in the WNBA. I mean, all you have to do, Kayla McBride has mastered the Clay Thompson, I'm going to come off a pin down. And if I'm opening up, I'm shooting it. And if the big who set the screen slips to the basket, I'm throwing this pass and it's getting there. She's absolutely, it's a joy to watch. I mean, that's kind of sums up the way they create offense. I like the basketball nerd in me could not gush enough about this team and like talk about the beautiful game. They play it on both ends.
Yeah, that is actually the way that they certainly differentiate themselves from the Minnesota Timberwolves
Yeah,
is
I was gonna say,
the
yeah.
fact of that offense. They don't turn the ball over nearly as much as the Timberwolves do. I do want to talk about the offense, but I
Mhm.
do want to bring it to the defense first and foremost because that's what impresses me the most about the
Right.
Lynx. So they have gone 3-1 with the Liberty on the season. That's if you count the Commissioner's Cup final, which they also don't count in the regular season totals in the
Yeah.
WNBA, similar to the ISD final. But why is it that you think that those games just kind of overall have been such a tough matchup for the Liberty in particular? Because it is the only team in the WNBA that has given them that level of issue consistently throughout the season.
There is an important thing to note on the other side of the ball, which I'll just touch on really quick, is
Hmm.
that the Liberty's length and the switching that we talk about and court coverage is nullified if your switch is a second late or whatever it is. No matter how long you are, they will find the crack in the defense. So that's been a challenge for the Liberty. But as with the Liberty have the ball on the other end of the floor, uh, they are so good at pre-rotating. And okay, if it looks like an advantage situation, not only are we getting there on the catch, but the logical next pass, the next swing, we also have that covered. Perhaps, definitely better than any team in the league. And for a Liberty team that's thrived on the ball movement, 4-on-3 situations that I keep talking about, that's given them pause often. And Sabrina had a quote yesterday. She said, "It's like you drive the lane and 3 people come out of nowhere." And it does feel like that, the way they are able to both pack the paint and then fly around on closeouts. So you can get a paint touch, kick it out to the corner, swing it to the wing, and somehow the Lynx have been there at all 3 junctures. And I think just their level of defensive intensity, doubling in the post, assigning the correct level of attention to the Liberty stars, and then recovering on the advantages is what makes them so tough for the Liberty. I mean, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but just high level execution for all 24 seconds of a possession.
Yeah. So you're saying basically they're a tough matchup for everybody
They're
just by
just really
virtue of
good.
that.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm not sounding very, insightful right now, but they're just really damn good. It's awesome to watch.
On that defense, I just want to bring it back to Jonquel, who
Mhm,
I feel like, despite the collapsing on the interior that the Lynx like to do, like everyone has been doing to JJ this season,
mhm,
I feel like with the Lynx front court in particular, JJ should have a bit more an advantage than she's had in these meetings, just because
right,
of her strength. Despite how good of a defensive player Nafisa Collier, the starting power forward and the best player on the Lynx, is. And in the lone win that the Liberty had against the Lynx this season, Jonquel had 21 points. She was incredibly efficient and
mhm,
again looked very dominant. And in their losses, she posted single digits, 4 points in Minnesota, 9 points in a game that they played in New York. This was just a couple weeks ago. And even in the game on Sunday, the Liberty only started to make their run after Jonquel left the floor. So this was when uh the Liberty really started to like lean into just Sabrina, Brianna pick and pop and then just getting the ball
mhm.
to Brianna
Right,
at really
right.
any cost and trying to create space for her. What is it that Minnesota in particular is doing to really like neutralize Jonquel to the point where it's like better to have her off the floor entirely?
I think, in those early games, the foul trouble was the
Mm,
pinnacle of like, wow,
okay.
Jonquel looks like one of the best players in the world to, okay, like she didn't really show up today. And the early foul trouble kind of took her out of her rhythm. She
Yeah.
spent a lot of time just frustrated with the refs. And then, as we talked about, their ability to swarm her really frustrated her. In the game in New York that the Liberty won, and this is something Sandy's talked about a lot, they got Jonquel downhill in the pick and roll. And it's the difference between her and Niara Sabali I talked about, where it wasn't like downhill in the pick and roll, I'm catching it and finishing at the rim. Downhill, like I'm catching it at the free throw line and I'm taking a dribble and a spin move or I'm hitting that little 14 footer that I can hit so well, where you're kind of creating a semi advantage for her. And then she's playing off of it, where it's tough to swarm her if you're already in recover mode, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, kind of the straight post ups, let's feed the block. The Lynx know where they're going to help from, where they're going to double, where they're going to rotate out of. If you get her on the move a little, if she's catching it in the middle of the floor while Minnesota's recovering, it's far less easy for them to do that. So that's going to be again, it kind of all comes back to Sabrina. If she can attract enough attention to get Jonquel that pocket pass, and now JJ can play in the middle of the floor, that's really going to help her against Minnesota because the straight up post up seal, like the Lynx are too good for that to just play kind of in a stagnant, isolation mode. Like
Right.
they are going to have a game plan and they're going to execute it against that.
They basically play defense in such a way that requires you to have multiple levels of advantage creation on the
Mhm.
same possession every single time. And
That's why these games are so high level because it's like a 20 shot tennis rally. It's like, wow, like both teams had to execute for 15 seconds of that shot clock at a high level to end up with a good shot.
speaking of that game
Mhm.
that again just happened yesterday, Courtney Vandersloot was also taken off the floor, maybe not for the entire fourth quarter, but at some point, and then she did not close the
Yep.
game. And it was again the same stretch that the Liberty were making their run. I would think that having multiple like shot creating ball handlers on the floor would be advantageous in that situation, especially since they effectively like kind of made the decision to go a little bit smaller when they took Jonquel off the
Mhm.
floor in favor of Niara. But they didn't do that, and they were again running offense primarily through Sabrina and Stewie. Why do you think that Sloot was taken off the floor in that stretch? Was it more because of the defense, or was it more because of the offense, or was it both?
I think that game was a slight anomaly because the Liberty were down 20, and it was like,
Mhm.
let's see this lineup if they can do something in the first 2
Right.
minutes, otherwise
Let's
we'll pull the plug.
I see.
And so she let it ride. But they have been doing that. Like Sloot has not played much in the fourth quarter,
Mm,
this season. She's not bad on offense, but it's not worth the defensive boost that a 6'4" wing in Leonie Febish will give you that can also, shoot 40% from three. The Lynx kind of going under these ball screens stunts any advantage that the Liberty have. And Sloot's only recourse is to shoot a pull up 18, 20 footer. And while it's good for her to take that shot, that's maybe not the look the Liberty want to generate over and over in the fourth quarter with Stewie,
sure.
Sabrina, and JJ
Yeah.
on the floor. So it's not even that she's doing anything wrong or unexpected. It's that if you're going to put the ball in Sabrina's hands, as they have been doing all season, it's just not worth it to not have Leonie Febish out there to boost the defense. Last year they didn't have her, and Kayla Thornton is not the shooter and offensive player Leo is on that end. So they kind of had to play that starting five with Sloot in the lineup all fourth quarter. It's just a different team this season. Big thanks to Leo for that.
Let's actually move on to the fun part of the Minnesota Lynx. Well,
Nice.
fun for them.
Yes, yes.
I don't know if it's fun for I don't know if either side of the ball is fun for their opponents really. But the Minnesota Lynx are, like you said, an excellent ball movement team and shooting team. I have in my notes here just a little gif of the Snoop meme because she does not miss. Like, it feels like she never misses. I think
It
I saw maybe the second time that she'd ever missed a mid-range jump shot in this game.
The other thing is that they like her teammates have no fear. Like if she is going to rise up at the buzzer of game 5 of the finals for a 20-footer, she's going to feel like it's going in and everyone in the arena will feel like it's going to be cash. Like it does not matter when or the pressure of the moment, anything like that.
Right. And, included in this highlight reel is also plays that she's making as the team's point guard, right? She's
Mhm.
also setting up her teammates, but yet like you said, she's incredibly confident in this mid-range jump shot. She was incredibly efficient in the game yesterday, 15 points on 7 of 12. She's averaging 45% from the field. I focused more on the other aspects of this matchup to kind of figure out like which team has which advantages over the other. But it feels like Courtney Williams is particularly comfortable in this matchup. Like you said, right up until the point where it's Brianna Stewart guarding her
Yeah.
in this game. Do you think that she poses a specific matchup problem for the Liberty just by virtue of like she's comfortable against everybody else on the team guarding her? Is that a problem that they basically have to put Brianna on her, as opposed to bigger players that could pose other issues if the Lynx like figure out how to exploit that adjustment that the Liberty make?
It's definitely a problem, and like you would naturally think to turn to, Benijah Laney Hamilton.
Hmm.
But the thing about Benijah is she's just so big and strong that she's better guarding up than guarding down
Yeah,
positionally. And like you can pick her off on screens because she's such a big target.
right.
So that kind of mutes her effectiveness a little against
And
Courtney
unlike a lot of other guards that would like Courtney is a good driver. We saw her
Williams.
create some assists on drives in that highlight reel, but usually she's not looking to like score when she's driving downhill like that. Like she's kind of collapsing the defense
Yeah.
and looking to kick out or find cutters. But if you lose her on a screen and the big isn't playing up, that midi is open and she is going to rise up, fire, and make it.
And it's cash. And then if the big is up, she got that
Right.
pocket pass down.
Right, on those
Yeah.
slips.
So it's tough. I mean, the Liberty don't have the great answer for her. And the other thing she does is she'll move off the ball. Like she'll run through a couple screens before getting the handoff. That just requires the Liberty's level of whether it's screen navigation or, focus, like communicating switches to be on point. And
Yeah.
we did see them execute, their defense for 2 quarters, through 2.5 quarters yesterday. But when they're not in that first quarter, it's going to be
It
Courtney
gets
Williams
ugly.
getting these open shots, and it's going to kill you.
Yeah. So Minnesota is first in assist rate, both as a fraction of their field goals and of their possessions. They like to move the ball a
Yes.
lot, and it really does put a lot of pressure on defenses. I actually have a quote here that you have from Leonie Fibish
Yeah.
from after the game. She says, "Look, I know we've played some teams that don't play this way in the last, I don't know, 10 games. It's not easy to come into this game and play a team like Minnesota who moves so well and knows each other to a T. So great
Mhm.
chemistry there with the Lynx. They know exactly where the ball is going, what the next action is. If we switch here, they always have a counter. So I think that's what happened in the first quarter, and then they
Yeah.
fixed up some things in the second half. She talked about their communication and talked about how they were a bit more aggressive defensively, especially in that fourth quarter, changing up the defense. Now, when it comes to these kind of teams that do move the ball really well, you made an interesting point in the opposite direction earlier about the Lynx. So they are constantly they also have obviously a lot of length on defense and they're flying around to contest and all of this. But especially when the Liberty go to some of these bigger lineups with Sabrina at the one, they can also have that advantage. But you have to be on point with your communication on your switches and all of that. But it's actually one of the things that I've talked about a lot with the Nuggets versus a team like the Timberwolves that do play such a similar aggressive style on defense where they're contesting for every inch on any given offensive possession is that you have to be really decisive in your ball movement and off ball movement, everything, because you don't want to give the defense any chance to recover. Because if you do, because of the length they have, they will get there and that makes things a lot harder. So it puts a lot of mental strain on teams, but it feels like the Lynx have actually done that on offense. Like
Right.
because of how decisive they are in moving the ball. And they also have these incredible shooters on the team in Kayla McBride and Bridget Carlton, who are both shooting over 40% from three on a very healthy volume. They always manage to create these open shots because teams are, when things break down, the defense is often prioritizing the paint over anything else. And so these shooters, fly around and they get open.
Mhm.
And, I've seen people question whether that 3-point shooting is going to hold up in the playoffs. But do we have any reason to think that the Lynx, and particularly Kayla McBride and Bridget Carlton, their best shooters on this team, can't replicate that shooting through a deep playoff run?
No, I don't think so. And it's like the Courtney Williams thing. They have no fear. And you may think, oh, is Kayla McBride and Bridget Carlton really going to lead them offensively to a title or lead them from the perimeter, Nafisa? But it is time we kind of get rid of those expectations. They take tough shots, they take contested shots, end of shot clock. If you're not there, they're firing. There's no hesitation. So
No hesitation.
no hesitation. Like yesterday, how many times would the Liberty defend for 22 seconds of the shot clock and get burned? There is no reason to think that it won't continue in the playoffs if they're getting those looks. Obviously the
Right.
challenge is preventing said looks, but much easier said than done.
Right. And I almost think that the first 5 to 10 seconds of the shot clock matter more than anything else because as soon as there's a breakdown,
Mhm, mhm.
because of how willingly and efficiently the Lynx move the ball, as soon as that initial breakdown happens, you're playing from behind the whole rest of that offensive possession and just like hoping that whoever gets the open shot that they're inevitably going to get just misses. So yeah, like you said, I think that the Lynx need to be treated as a serious threat for the title. But what do you think this Minnesota Lynx team is missing at a high level? Because we've talked about the defense, both on the interior and on the perimeter,
Mhm.
um, and everything in between. They defend everything. We've talked about shooting. We've talked about Courtney Williams as a perimeter creator. We didn't even get to Nafisa Collier, who actually is
Right.
in like serious DPOI conversations in addition to other players in the league, and is an interior creator herself, and she can also create on the perimeter. She's a very versatile player
Yep.
herself. What is this Lynx team missing for other people to take them seriously as a title threat?
I really do think it is name recognition, especially when you look at the Aces and the Liberty who are stacked with Olympians and MVPs and All-Stars. I do think if there's one, basketball reason you can point to as a potential, flaw or exploitable area of the team, they are not a good rebounding team
Mm.
at all. Really, which is shocking to say about like, oh, they do everything right and they do all the little things and coach's dream, blah, blah, blah. They are currently last in defensive rebounding percentage and they're 10th
Oh,
in
wow.
offensive
Yeah, look at
rebounding
that.
percentage. So, by any measure, they're the worst rebounding team in the league. Uh, yeah, it's really them
That's
that
pretty
far.
shocking that
I know.
they have the number 1 defense
I
with the
know.
worst defensive rebounding percentage. I wonder if that's ever happened in the NBA.
Their only competition are the fundamentally, again, unserious Mercury, who are 11th in both categories, because if Brittany Griner doesn't turn in a superhero performance, they just don't make sense. Yeah.
Do you have any explanation for why they're such a bad rebounding team?
I don't know. I think maybe part of it is they fly around so much
Mm.
on defense and they're contesting every shot that leaves you
They get out of
vulnerable.
position more. Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost how it's, like, tough to rebound out of a zone. Like, when you're growing up in middle school and high school and you're actually playing a lot of 2-3 zone, like, that's what you hear because you don't have a mark, so it's tough to box out your zone. And really, when you're flying around after an advantage has been created, it's kind of the same thing, right? So if I had to, proffer an explanation on that, it would be kind of the principles of a zone and flying around. And also, they're just not that big, especially compared to that's why
Yeah.
they struggle with Connecticut.
Yeah.
It's someone pointed out to me yesterday, we're in this cyclical thing of like, oh, the Liberty would be title favorites, but they can't beat the Lynx, who can't beat the Sun, who can't beat the Aces, who can't beat and you go on and on. But that is the area to me that if I'm a Lynx fan worries me. Is the worst rebounding team in the league really going to win a title? Like the worst? I know it's a 12-team league, but
Yeah, no, I definitely missed that stat, so I'm glad that you brought that to my attention. It's funny too because I have here that they're 3rd in offense, but
yeah,
they're dead last or 2nd to last in offensive rebounding. That's, like, impressive. That's, like, Oklahoma City Thunder level where they're a top 5 offense and then the worst offensive rebounding team in the league
right.
at the same time. That just means you're like, "Oh my god, they're crazy efficient. Don't let them get any offensive rebounds because if you do, like, you're gonna get burned." Again, yeah, 3rd in offense, 1st in defense, despite their rebounding woes. So that's what would really keep them from getting there. Now, assuming the Liberty make the finals, let's say the Lynx do get there on the other side of the
Mhm,
bracket, because it looks like
mhm.
both teams have effectively locked up the 1st and 2nd seed. So if they did meet in the
Right.
playoffs, it would be in the finals. What do you think the Liberty would have to do fundamentally to flip the script on what we've seen in the regular season meeting? Is it really just high level execution and energy every single night and every minute of the game? Or are there specific adjustments that you would make both to the rotations, to like how players are matching up with other players, on the links, etc.?
Yeah, I you might have to really consider bringing Sloot off the bench just to
Mm.
maximize how often your best lineup is on the court. I also think part of it is execution and energy. Just when we saw the Liberty defend Minnesota well, it was because they drew a line in the sand and played as hard as them. And I don't think that's going to be an issue in the finals, but if they get punched in the mouth in a final series in game one, in game two, or they get down in a quarter, it's kind of continuing their principles and that effort. And that's occasionally been a problem for them, partly because they're not down a lot. So when they get down, it's unfamiliar waters. And then the rest is Sabrina can't be shooting 5 for 20. It's everything we've talked about. JJ has to be engaged. And really, my worry is on offense. Like, you don't want every possession devolving into Sabrina fading away 28-foot three off the dribble, 16-foot floater. It's, are you getting into the lane? Is the shot pass balance really, in the team's favor? And if they do that, they will be favorites. And I think the Liberty, should be favorites. And the other thing, obviously, is getting there healthy. It's funny, after the Lynx game, they're like, we want to see this team down the road. We'll learn. I'm like, guys, like, you're playing the Aces in round 2. Like, I wouldn't, like, enough of
Yeah.
this. Like, I get it, but also relax on this talk. But they might see them down the road.
Yeah, I'm nervous about all of it because, like you said, those top 4 teams, they have some interesting matchup problems with each other
Mhm.
that goes in this kind of. I'm thinking of an analogy where you're playing the game Snake and the snake starts eating its tail, and that's how
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
is. And
We're
that's
getting,
what this
yeah,
kind of reminds me
circular
of.
logic. Yeah.
Is there anything else that you want to say just about the Lynx or about the Liberty that you think people should know that they don't?
If you like basketball, you should really watch the Lynx, especially, I know you have probably a more NBA centric audience. And like, I was an NBA centric basketball viewer for many years. And so I get the kind of transition, but like, man, these Liberty Lynx games are maybe the highest level of execution I've seen, like, across the W this year, like, especially the Commissioner's Cup, yesterday. So just come prepared to watch really, really high level basketball when you're looking at these teams. And just know that, your fellow NBA fans and players are tapped into. I saw Maurice Cheeks at the game yesterday,
Hmm.
just by himself, just like taking in some good basketball. So yeah, I would say that. And in terms of, I guess, player specific stuff, um, Stewie, the motor thing, we've covered it. If you want to watch the most talented player on the floor go balls to the wall and exhibit these qualities we all know and love. If you want to watch, we kind of have a player comp thing here. There are moments when Jonquel Jones looks like Nikola Jokic, and I don't say that lightly, but when you're this big force, you're the biggest player on the court, and you're throwing behind the back passes and you're pump fake, give and go, and then another pass, that's really like who it reminds you of. Also, an on-off splits god since the beginning of her career, which is why all these NBA stat nerds migrating over to the W discover Jonquel Jones, and they're like, "Who is this?"
Who's this goddess?
So another
I
Nikola.
read a stat the other day that she's like leading the WNBA in no look passes.
She is. She is. I guess they track that on Second Spectrum. Every swing pass she catches is going behind the back. So she'll just move it along to the next shooter behind the back. Part of the advantage of being huge and being able to grip a basketball like a piece of fruit.
That's why we want her to keep the ball high because like no one
Yeah.
else can get there if you if you do that.
One of the most interesting watches every night in the W because of her incredible skill and occasional frustrating tendencies.
You used the word mercurial,
I
and
did.
I'm surprised that that word has come up on this podcast twice in like 3 weeks, and I don't think I've ever used that word myself in my life. Because we use it for Jamal Murray as well.
Yeah, I'm glad that it's I didn't, I limited the sports writer cliches and this one to just one word.
Awesome. Thanks for that discussion on both of those teams. For everyone listening, over half of you are not subscribed. So if you do like our content, please remember to subscribe. And then always remember that winning is fun and losing sucks.